Don't blink. In Copper Ridge, a Bar-K branding iron jutted out of the mud before the tying post. A girl did not cry out, and a stranger burned through the whole winter just to clear away. I stood there, smelling scorched iron mixed with sealing ink. Want to know what justice looks like when it bites into skin? Sit still and watch. That morning, the mud was still cold as a dead man's hand. The Bar-K iron sank halfway down at the tying post, the broken edge of the K glistening wet. I saw Harlan Pike bend, leather glove brushing steel. Mud fell in drops, round as coffee beans, cracking when they struck dry ground. The whip cracked. The sound cut clean, sharp like someone snapping a thin bone. Ada Vale raised her face. No sound left her, only a thin breath, rasping, tangled with iron and sunburnt hide. Her hair was bound hurriedly with a frayed cord, sweat pulling strands tight against her nape. The crowd stood in a half circle, thick as a fence. Boots pressed down on weed stalks, grinding grit steady and even. A yellow dog stretched its neck out from under a wagon, licking its muzzle as a drop of mud fell before its snout. No one drove it away, no one stepped closer. Harlan lifted the iron with one hand. The weight dragged his wrist down half a notch. He turned it, one slow circle, testing the wire-bound wooden handle. The broken K-edge, teeth like a bite. Light sifted through clouds, touched that chip, flashed quick then gone. Harlan's face did not shift. His jaw set tight, the thin scar on his cheekbone pulled like a taut thread. Ada's eyes moved past him, did not stop. Her eyes searched for someone else, searched for a ring. I saw it before she did, a fat gold ring on Malcolm Rudd's pinky. The ring's face carved with a crude K, its surface worn down at one corner. He tapped the ring against the whip's handle, slow rhythm, each strike shaking loose a speck of dust like small flies. The whip cracked again, a new tear of skin, sharp-edged. She still stayed silent. Teeth pressed into her lower lip, leaving a pale, short streak. The iron in Harlan's hand was cold. I knew that because his breath made no steam, and because the reek of rust still rose strong. Someone had left it here early. No one explained. No one asked why the iron lay under the tying post. In Copper Ridge, a man's tool was his own affair. But that day, Bar-K's tool waited right before the town's eyes. The church bell struck one. The sound stretched, touched roof tiles, then broke apart into shards, raining over the square. An old woman clutched her chest, thin hand fingering her rosary. The beads clicked faintly, like a drizzle of glass. Harlan propped the iron upright, one end braced against the post. Steel hit wood with a dull, short note. He stepped back, said nothing. I heard sweat drip from his neck onto not know what she thought. Here, thoughts rarely turned into words. Objects did the speaking. Wind pressed in. Dust coiled around Harlan's boots, the worn leather edges rasping against each other in a dry shuffle. The iron chain scraped in the wooden ring of the post, clattering like a cheap clock. Sheriff Boyd Keller stood on the brick steps of the courthouse, higher than the square by half a man. The badge on his chest gleamed like a polished coin. His hand rested on it, thumb at the rim, turning slow. His coat flat, collar straight, jaw shaven clean. The old mint smell drifted down with him, thin as a reminder. Keller did not say, "Stop." He did not say, "Go on." His eyes went from the iron leaning at the post, to Ada's outstretched arm, to Rudd's ring. He stayed there a beat longer than a blink, just long enough for anyone near to notice. Ada bit her lip hard again. Blood flushed purple at once. Her eyes locked on the gold ring, then rose to Rudd's face. He twitched his mouth, one side, not a smile, just lifted his chin a fraction, the way a man born to order does. Dust clung around the hem of his black coat. Good cloth, no straw clinging like those who work the stables. The deputy raised the whip to his shoulder, waiting for a nod. Rudd did not nod. He only turned the ring. The gold glare brushed across Keller's face. I saw the sheriff's eyes narrow. His hand stayed on the badge. Far off, a horse blew hard. A man tugged reins by the hitching rail, glanced, then looked away. A boy pressed his forehead to the store's frame, leaving a damp smudge of child's sweat. The yellow dog shifted, laid its chin on its forepaws, eyes fixed on the deputy's boots. The wind carried pine oil, abraded metal, human hide. Those smells pressed together into a thick layer in the throat. Water would not wash it down. I swallowed dry, my throat clicking. No one heard. Ada shifted her weight, toes seeking purchase in the dirt. A clod rolled from her sole, dropped into the puddle where the iron had just been. The water spread slow, wrapping a short straw like a fallen hair. Harlan stood one arm's reach from her. His eyes did not settle on anyone. He looked at the base of the post, the crack in the bricks under Keller's shoes, the flaked paint on the wooden door behind. Things men seldom look at. He did not rub his hands. He did not glance skyward. He made only one motion. His jawbone locked. Once. Keller dropped his gaze to the line of faces, slid across each as if counting. When his eyes came to me, I blinked. He lifted his fingertip from the badge's rim a fraction. Small, clean, cold. Then he turned away. The deputy read the order in that gesture. He raised the whip again. The square's pulse beat at a point unseen, where the whip's mouth would slice the air. Rudd moved, half a step. Cloth pouch, mouth tied with frayed twine. I had not asked what he kept inside. Harlan lifted the iron from the post, brushed the chip clean on the hem of his pale gray coat. He leaned it back firm against the post, this time with a K facing the square. As he withdrew his hand, his ring finger brushed the chipped edge. A new smear of mud stamped across his glove. No one said enough. No one said not enough. No law was read aloud, only the bell counting slow. Each toll divided by a silence so long you could hear wind threading through the nail holes in the tin roof. The smell of rust mixed with torn hide. I heard wagon wheels somewhere roll one clattering turn, then stop. A canvas sheet lifted lightly in the wind. A metal hook struck wood with a single clack. I turned my head. The alley behind the post office was narrow as a bottleneck. No light reaching the bottom. The dark gray sheet had just fallen, swallowing whatever lay beneath. A hat flickered in the shadow, the face unseen. Only the black brim stitched with coarse thread, the toe of a boot sparking a pebble. Then the shape drifted back, brushing past the rear wheel of a green flaked wagon. That wagon was Harlan's. I knew because its tailboard bore a crack shaped like a eucalyptus leaf. Not many wagons carried that scar. The bell counted 2. Its tone rang longer than the first. The deputy held the whip aloft longer than one beat. He shifted his grip, tested the flex. Ada did not look at him. Her eyes slid past the whip's tip, past the courthouse step, stopped at Harlan. Only a stop, very brief. Then back to the ring. Keller lifted his heel half an inch from the brick step, just enough for dust to puff up like powdered milk. His hand left the badge, adjusted his cuff. The fabric's edge showed a thin brown streak, half a finger's length. Could be mud, could be old smoke. He pulled the sleeve down, covered it. No one remarked. Harlan stood straight. He pulled his coat collar high, blocking the wind at his neck. His eyes passed over the fallen canvas, quick, then back to the iron. The broken K showed like a tooth in a drunkard's mouth. He laid 2 fingers on the chipped edge, as if measuring sharpness. No blood rose. Steel did not cut. But I saw the glove grain roughen. I heard the faint hiss between someone's teeth nearby. A throat clearing swallowed down. The smell of fresh blood rose stronger, laced with rust. Ada tilted her head, letting sweat trail to one side. That streak ran along her shoulder blade, vanished beneath the cord. Rudd stepped, stitching. This time, what glinted under the canvas was metal, very quick, a round head, a straight line, then still. The wind pressed the canvas flat again, as if no hand had touched it. I caught the smell of old machine oil drifting from that way, thin as a whisper. Ada closed her eyes once, longer than a blink. When she opened them, she looked straight at me as if through me. I turned away. I looked at the iron leaning on the post, the broken K tilted skyward. I heard earth sink under Harlan's heel as he shifted weight to his left leg. A small change, enough for anyone familiar to notice. The deputy lowered the whip by an inch. His biceps trembled. His arm had done this often, but never before a woman who did not cry out. The rawhide glistened in the sun, his palm imprint damp with sweat. Flies drew near, circling the iron scent. Keller closed two fingers, like a man sealing a letter. He stepped down one rung. His shadow covered a patch of earth. His face unchanged, the brown streak still hidden under cloth. The badge no longer gleamed like before. His eyes slid past Harlan's shoulder into the dark behind the canvas. A faint flicker at his left eye's corner. In the trade they called it seen. He gave no order. He gave no halt. Harlan pulled his hand from the iron. His finger brushed Ada's binding cord, not enough to loosen, only enough to gauge. The cord tightened, hissed faint like a young snake startled. Ada drew breath through her teeth, her lips parted half an inch. No words. The bell counted 4. This toll, longer, weary as the town's back. The canvas behind the post office billowed once more, then lay flat for good. Someone had finished their work. Rudd turned his ring back to its place. The deputy drew deep breath. Keller reset his hand on the badge, thumb on its edge. I heard my heartbeat in the wrong place, not in my chest, but in the chipped K staring skyward. Just then, a child sneezed, scattering fine dust into the light, breaking its steadiness. Everything returned, as if nothing had happened. Only one thing had. Something had been stowed under the canvas of the green wagon. I told no one. In Copper Ridge, men learn to swallow what eyes see, but mouths should not speak. The bell counted 5. The whip lifted. The iron leaned on the post. The broken K waited. And morning went on, as though the town had never changed its shade. Rudd jerked his chin toward Ada like tossing a rancid bone to a dog. His coat swelled with dust, the inside hem lined with dark braid. He tapped the gold ring on the whip handle. Thunk, a lazy verdict's beat. Wed or pay. His eyes went across Harlan, across the bar K iron leaning, then back to Rudd, unblinking. The deputy rolled his wrist, softening the whip, the hide rasped, small dimples showing under his grip. He looked to Rudd for a nod. Rudd nodded. The whip rose, wind-torn, ripping a thin line through air. The square leaned slightly toward that path. Harlan took his first step. One rung. His boot struck brick's edge, plaque dry. The thin scar on his cheekbone showed sharp in the hot sun. His gray coat fell open halfway, showing a black gun grip smooth as a river stone. He did not look at the sheriff. He did not look at Rudd. He looked at the post, at the cord eating into Ada's wrists like leeches. Wind pushed Keller's mint scent down, but here the blood smell pressed stronger. Rudd curled his lip, his coat collar jutting like a crow's beak. Simple. He tapped the ring again. Wed or pay? He did not finish the word debt, swallowed half, leaving the rest stuck to his gold tooth inside. Ada rose on her toes, searching for hold, wrists twisted purple-red. She did not look at faces. She looked at the bar K iron shadow angled across the dirt. The broken K drove into her own shadow, like a short tooth. She did not step out of it. Keller shifted weight to his right foot. Slight, only dust under his heel rose like chalk, fell on the brick step, then vanished. He tilted his head by 1 degree, his eyes narrowing as if through a needle's hole, his face unchanged. Harlan climbed 1 step more. His right hand touched the gun grip, not deep enough to draw, only enough for the glove to rasp faint on worn wood. His left hand moved behind Ada's back, covering the scraped shoulder blade. He did not touch the wound. Between his palm and her back there was a layer of hot air and iron scent. Thin as a slip of paper, strands of sweat-soaked hair from her neck clung to the back of his hand for a blink. Then the wind pulled them loose. "Enough," someone said behind me, no louder than a grasshopper. No one answered. The deputy lowered the whip only an inch. The wind's cut ended, like a string wound wrong. Harlan turned his left wrist slightly. A pocket knife thin as a leaf slid from his cuff. Steel flashing pale, then gone in the post's shadow. The blade touched the hemp cord. Snap. 1 strand. The other held, scraping skin, leaving a faint white mark. The bar K iron still leaned on the post, silent as a headstone. The broken K caught sunlight through the cloud rim, throwing a short beam. The beam landed on Ada's wrist, where the knife had grazed, then went out. Ada exhaled through her teeth, short. No cry. Rudd laughed through his nose. "Touching property I've got under lien," he said, ring-tapping whip handle. 1 more beat. "Add the badge." He only shifted his sightline. His eyes ran a circuit. Harlan's knife, the cord, the bar K iron, the gold ring. He stopped on the ring longer than 1 breath. Harlan slid the blade under the cord again. The gap between him and the deputy was 1 leap. The deputy knew it. He gripped the whip tighter, shoulder raised, ready to cut across the hand. But when the blade sliced, Harlan withdrew fast, as if measuring the whip's arc ahead of time. The whip cracked the post, hollow wood thudding. Whump! A splinter dropped, sticking in mud at the base. The binding sagged. Ada lowered her arms by half a span, her shadow bent at a new angle. That distance let her breathe deeper. She did not. Her throat worked, swallowing dry. Her lips parted closed, no word passing. The bar K iron still stood. Harlan glanced at it, a glance as brief as an eye shut against falling grit. I caught it because I stood close. He shifted weight off his right foot, ready to pull Ada from the post if the whip fell again. Keller turned his badge half a circle, the scrape of metal against his nail, faint as a mosquito's whine. At the square's edge, the yellow dog crept from under the wagon, sniffed the mud where the iron had leaned. It sneezed, stepped back half a pace, ears flat. The smell of iron still fresh. "Put that thing away," Rudd said, his chin pointing at the bar K iron. He did not raise a hand. He tapped his ring on his thigh, 3 even beats. The deputy flicked from ring to iron. No one moved, only Harlan. He tilted the iron straighter, as if fearing it might fall, as if telling it to stand and face, silent. The alley behind the post office was bottleneck narrow. Red brick walls, mortar bleached pale, rows of rusted nails, tin roof, bleeding heat at noon. But shadows kept the nights chill. A dark gray sheet covered the green-painted wagon, tied by frayed hemp cord. The tailboard bore the eucalyptus leaf crack. I knew the mark. Harlan entered the alley without turning back. Ada followed half a step, her back pressed to coarse bandage cloth, leaving a darker stain than normal. Their shadows overlapped on the dirt, then split when their stride shifted. Harlan pulled the cord. The knot opened like an old man's knee cracking faint. He caught the sheet's edge, jerked it once. Light poured into the wagon bed. Old machine oil rose, the smell of axle nights, of journeys without sleep. At the same time another odor struck me, hot iron not yet cooled. Strong as copper against tongue. Inside, the bar K iron. Not the one leaning at the post a minute ago, but here it lay, neat on a spare tarp, clean of mud, clean of grit. The broken K faced us. Its chipped edge wept a thin film of moisture, steaming into mist when caught by light. Long. Between them, a brown dot no bigger than a fingernail head, fresh, rising. Ada froze at the wheel step. Her pupils shrank to thread. She looked at the iron. She looked at Harlan's hand, still gripping the tarp. She looked at the brown dot on canvas. She did not look at me. I heard her breath snag at her nose, then slip out, like someone who changes their mind at the last instant. Harlan gave no explanation. He did not say, borrowed, nor kept, nor found. He simply laid the tarp back halfway, covering half the iron, leaving the broken K still staring at the sky. His face flat as a winter pond. I tried to see if he blinked faster. He did not. A drop fell from the tin roof, striking the chip. Sss, soft. The hot iron smell thickened in my throat. Ada stepped back half a pace, her heel drawing a small arc in dirt, leaving a crescent. She spread her fingers, not to touch, only to measure. The distance from her to the broken K was 1.5 spans. At the alley's mouth, someone passed, only a brim sliding by, cutting the light. The brim paused, then moved on. Harlan did not turn. Ada looked at the brim, then back to the wagon bed. A streak of dried mud cracked off the tarp's edge when the wind brushed it, falling like dead skin. A black fly landed on the wire-wrapped handle of the iron. It walked the coil, reached the old burn mark, stopped. Its wings drummed. Ada waved her hand. The fly lifted. Its wings sliced through the shimmer of heat, wavered once, then vanished. Harlan dropped the tarp 2/3 down. Still left the broken K exposed. A strange choice. Not hidden, not shown, just left midway, like evidence that breathed on its own. I swallowed dry. My throat rasped loud enough for me to hear. "It's time," came footsteps clapping on brick outside. The voice not loud, but weighted. That sound dragged the old mint scent into the alley, pushing the hot iron smell back, like two odors clashing, then standing equal. Sheriff Keller appeared at the dark corner. He did not step straight into the light. He stood at the edge so that his shadow fell across the green wagon's frame, sinking into the eucalyptus leaf crack. His shadow swallowed half of the broken K jutting out. The other half stayed lit. Two halves in disagreement, meeting at the chip's edge, like two borders biting each other. Keller's face unchanged. He looked at Harlan. Harlan looked at the tarp, as if not yet raising his head. Ada looked at Keller, then at his hand. That hand no longer rested on the badge. Harlan's temple down to his cheek, then vanished into the short beard. Many mistook that pause for pity. I did not. Keller lowered the tarp, not hard, not soft, just enough for the edge to brush the chip, sounding like thin paper. He did not ask, "Why is it here?" He did not ask, "Whose is it?" He only smoothed the crease with his palm, the motion of a man used to folding flags. Wind passed through the alley, caught at the wagon's lip like choking, then still. Still enough to hear the axle cord stretch one notch, metal scraping metal like two spoons touching. On the right wall, a strip of sunlight slid very slow, halted at Keller's shoulder edge. The light line stayed still, like a broken clock hand. Ada glanced at Harlan, a glance short as a blade slicing water. Where it passed, no sound, but I felt the air thicken half a finger. That thickness clogged the throat. People call that choking, but here no one names it. Only Ada's blink drawn longer than usual, and the distance between her and Harlan widened by half a step. Keller stepped back half a heel. He lifted his cuff half an inch, then dropped it again. The badge under his coat was gone from the frame. He glanced past me, as if marking who had witnessed. I lowered my chin. He let me pass. From the square, the church bell counted a late strike. The sound entered the alley, struck the tarp, and was swallowed. At the mouth, Rudd passed, the black cloak shadow sliding like a bat's wing. The gold ring glinted once. He did not stop. He threw a line from his mouth's corner, too faint to form a sentence. "Done yet?" Keller did not answer. He looked at Harlan once more. This time his eyes narrowed to a blade sheathed. He nodded very small. No one but me and Ada saw it. It was not assent. It was not threat. It was only a mark. "I have seen." Then he turned, his shadow pulling off the wagon's frame, giving the light back to the wall. The wind stilled a beat. The alley hung between breaths. We stood there, 3 people in one tarp. The iron lay beneath, heat still enough to make another drop fall. Sst, very faint. Ada pulled her hand back from the wagon's lip, as if she had touched a lie still warm. Harlan dropped the tarp edge. His hand fell to his side, brushed the gun grip without intent. At that brush I heard a sound small, metal grazing leather, enough to remind that everything still waited to break. Outside, the crowd stirred at some word from the south of town. Here we did not move. The stretched silence lasted another half a toll. Then wind blew through as if it had just remembered to breathe. But the trust that had stood in the alley left with it, slipped off Harlan's shoulders, fell into the dark under the wagon wheel, and lay there like a coiled snake. Torchlight swept the broken K, peeking from the tarp edge, left a spark, then ripped away. Torch grease stung into old iron smell, heavy as slaughterhouse smoke. Ada tugged her sleeve, cloth stuck to rough bandage, tearing with a crack. On her back, between whip stripes, a dark patch swelled into a K not fully formed. One bar chipped away. 2 swollen edges pressed into a crooked angle, skin bubbled thin as milk film. She did not moan. She only breathed shallow, eyes fixed on that mark as if on a letter carved into her flesh by a trembling hand. Harlan stood at the tarp's edge, 2 fingers touching the iron's head. The steel no longer burned, but warm as a stone after fire dies. His glove wrinkled where it met the chip, feeling the jagged tooth, half a bean in height. He turned his wrist half a circle, letting torchlight catch the scorch line along the rim, brown as coffee dried 2 seasons. The K carved in steel, missing its same corner, not mistaken. One bar K horse jerked its head, torchlight swayed, fire cutting across Ada's eyes, then vanishing on the stable's tin roof. Sand crumbled from her boot edge, rolled into the drain, wedged against 2 wheat grains dropped from the old granary. I saw the wheat blackened by last week's straw fire ash. Rudd pressed his horse forward, black cloak billowing like a bat's wing. The gold ring tapped his saddle, tock, tock, steady as a healthy heart. He did not look at the mark on Ada's back. He glanced at the iron under tarp's edge, one flick enough to know. The whip's butt struck his thigh, his voice rasping out flat, "Drop her by the law." The church bell counted 3 slow. The third came late, stumbling over hoofbeats. The deputy pulled the whip from the post, leather scraping wood like bark stripped from a tree. Ada pulled her sleeve down again, her back drawing tight, bandage rasping skin with a faint hiss. Harlan still held 2 fingers on the iron's head. His eyes moved from the broken K to the K on her back, then stopped at her eyes. That moment held, caught like a bird trapped in fishing line. The wind compressed at the alley's mouth, dust forming a thin veil before Keller. The sheriff stood between light and dark, his hand hanging, old mint drifting like a shadow refusing to leave. Torchlight bit his badge a spark, then released, leaving a black trace of shade. Ada did not speak. Harlan did not speak. The evidence spoke for them. A chipped mark, a swelling welt, a breath of irons ground under a shelf, shaped like a dark leaf drop. Keller stepped half from shadow, his heel striking brick with a crisp clack. He did not raise his hand to the badge. He inclined his head a hair, close enough that mint brushed the tarp's edge. "Hand her over, the debt clears," he said, voice steady as a man reading an inventory. His eyes fixed on the iron in the wagon, not on Ada, not on Harlan. That gaze pinned the chipped K, held it in place like a nail. Ada stepped back, her heel rasping on dry sand, trailing a thin white line. Her shoulder touched the wagon, the tarp brushing her hair, light as a stranger's hand. She lifted her face, met Keller's eyes, then slid past to Rudd's ring, stopped on Harlan's hand gripping tarp's edge. His fingernail bit cloth, a green thread sprouted. Rudd whistled low, one rider's torch tilted, flame licking the granary signboard. Pike grain, letters sun-faded, wood cracked along the grain. Harlan's eyes darted to that sign, then back to the iron. His winter stake lay in that granary, pine-sealed sacks of wheat, pinched dry oats, wax-sealed barrels of beans. I saw a coarse hemp cord trailing under the door, frayed like corn silk. The deputy raised his gun, its muzzle catching a short green gleam when torchlight shook. "Warrant here," he tapped the inside pocket of his coat, swelling with horse grease breath. He did not pull it, he only let the paper's edge peek, stamped. Ink still smelled fresh. Keller took another half-step, his hat shading half of Harlan's face. "She belongs to the debt," he said, eyes still on the iron under tarp. "Where the brand lies, the claim lies." He did not lift a hand, he only spoke, leaving the air to press throats on its own. Harlan raised his chin half an inch, exhaled thin through his nose. His hand slid from tarp's edge down to the gun grip, stopped at the worn ridge. He did not draw. He looked past Keller to the granary, measured quick the distance from door to haystack, from haystack to the oil cask for stall lamps. The distance was short. Ada pulled her blouse front, covering the welted K-shape. She did not cover it all. The cloth's hem lifted in wind, revealing half the dark swelling. Torchlight struck it, returned a red spark. She looked at Harlan. The question passed in her pupils did not break into words. Beside, Rudd's ring tapped a post, tock, tock. He leaned, pressed his lips, left Keller to speak. Behind him the riders fanned half-circle, muzzles low on the black leaf-shaped stain beneath the shelf in the granary. Torchlight caught that stain, held a thin gold hair strand glow. One strand was enough. Ada drew breath through her teeth, her shoulders lifted slight. Her eyes widened just enough for the flame to slip in. I saw what all saw, but none spoke. Trust had just withdrawn from between the two, leaving a crack like a dry channel in a water vein. That crack filled with iron smell and oils. Harlan moved past Keller, like water past stone, his shoulder brushing dry. He did not say excuse. He pushed the granary door. The wooden bolt popped like a spring bone. Planks groaned. Straw dust rose in strips, settled on his eyelids without making him blink. He reached to the lowest shelf, pulled a torch wrapped in oil-soaked rag for stall lamps. His fingers spun the old flint. Sparks showered into rag, a small rain, eaten quick by oil, swelling at once. Flame took the rag, bloomed with a muted thump. Harlan drove the torch into the old haystack, yellow strands whitening at tips, then surrendering, turning black as skin licked by smoke. The tin roof cracked tick-tick as heat pressed. A spider dropped, curled into a dot. "Pike!" someone shouted. Guns rose. Rudd jerked reins. His horse skittered left. One rider's torch slammed a post. Thump! Sparks burst into another horse's eye. It shrieked, recoiled, jarring its partner's barrel aside. Metal clanged stone. Keller swung half round into the granary, his eyes catching the leaf-shaped oil stain catching flame. He opened his mouth, not in time to release an order. Black smoke from the haystack pulled a thick curtain, swept across the threshold, veiled his badge, smothered its shine. Harlan hurled the torch into the forage by the stable. Flame devoured the oat's hem, ran the dry stitch line, printed a black stripe like ink on a debt ledger. He turned, seized the reins of a black horse tied at the porch, swung its body toward the alley. Its eyes flashed half-white as smoke surged, chest pounding wood frame. Ada. He said her name, one word, no spare. His hand gripped her elbow, lifted her onto the narrow saddle of the post-station mare, set her foot in the stirrup. Her shoulder brushed the mane, horse sweat soaked her bandage, salt scent sharp. Keller stepped into the street, his arm raised to bar, eyes looking sideways, not into Harlan. "Stop," he said, mint forced back by smoke, breaking into the smell of straw roast. Harlan did not stop. His gun grip brushed Keller's belt once, enough to push him aside half a step. He did not draw. He dropped his gaze to his heel, stomped out a spark. Rudd shouted, his ring flash barrel knocking it loose. Metal clattered on stone. Harlan drove Ada's mare into the dark gap between stable and post office wall, tight to the green wagon. The tarp's hem lifted in wind. The broken K flashed once. A spark flew past, struck the iron hot steel scent surged again. Ada shifted aside from the iron, her eyes brushed it, clung for half a beat, then fixed on the way out. The deputy raised his gun, his elbow resting on a beam, sighting through smoke. The wind turned, slapped the sheet of smoke in his face. He gulped, his eyes watered. The shot veered, punched through pike grain, drilled a hole in the pea. Splinters flew. A wheat kernel dropped from the gap, landed in a coal, smoking brown. Keller slipped past a horse's flank, his eyes stripped a line open for Harlan, not wide, enough. He said nothing. The badge under smoke dimmed, no longer shining in anyone's eyes. The path opened like an error. Harlan drove his heel into the black horse's flank, the animal pushing its chest through the smoke, breath hissing like a bellows. The tin roof above cracked 3 more small bursts. Sheets bent down the post edge, spilling a trail of sparks across the gap just opened. Ada's hem caught fire. Harlan slapped it out with his palm, the smell of scorched cloth mixing with horsehair smoke. Rudd wheeled his horse in pursuit, hooves hammering stone like hammers, his ring slashing his thigh into a red welt. "Block the alley," he shouted. A rider pressed in from the right, eyes squinted through smoke. A cold gust tore the haze. The granary's back door collapsed in heat, hinges shrieking like a saw on bone. The horse jolted, slipped. Its head struck the post, torch falling into the leaf-shaped oil stain, fire jumping a foot. Harlan forced his horse past the wagon's flank. The wheels scraped the horse's thigh with a screech. The tarp's edge snapped his cheek with a smack, hot canvas smell searing his lips. The broken K slid within a handspan of his knee. Fire caught it once more, flashing like an opened eye. Keller stood at Smoke's edge, chin lowered, his hand resting on his belt, not the gun. His face unchanged. His eyes followed the fire's path, counting the roof's strikes with the rhythm of a man accustomed to waiting for consequences. Harlan and Ada broke their horses through the smoke frame into cool breath spilling from the canal at the alley's end. Someone's wagon lay tipped across the road. Harlan turned once, eyes over Harlan's shoulder, staring at the sagging roof. In her gaze, the fire stood as two thin lines, unmoving. Harlan's winter broke into smoke behind her. His winter turned to ash in the air. No one mourned. No one laid a hand on him. Harlan bent low to the horse's neck, lips brushing wet mane. His left hand kept the reins, his right pressed its belly for rhythm, eyes fixed on the gray road ahead. He did not turn. He let smoke cover all behind, like closing a debt ledger with fire. To the left, Stonewall drank heat, water beating on moss, running crooked as hurried riding. To the right, riders circling back, fire chewing torch heads, black sticks cracking in wind. Between the walls, a wind pushed straight, carried them clear of iron and burning grain. Harlan and Ada passed through the last veil of smoke. The horse leapt a mound of blackened ash, like the grave of a season. Ahead, gravel road opened onto plain, dry wind cooling their faces like water. Behind, tin roof, still snapped small bursts, swallowed one by wind. On the road bank, a half-burnt grain stuck to Harlan's boot sole, dragged 2 steps, then fell back, resting in the draft. Black on one side, yellow on the other, like his winter left half in smoke. He did not turn to pick it up. He pressed harder into the stirrup, knees tight, keeping Ada's mare riding even with the black's chest. 2 horse necks bent into the same wind, Harlan's hat brim throwing shadow across Ada's shoulder, silent as an unread vow. The smoke behind drew shut like a curtain, sealing the square, swallowing the granary, the badge, the ring, the hot chipped K under tarp. On the road out, the wind turned, carrying the church bell late, striking their backs like a hand's pat. Not blessing, not blocking, only to remind. They had left their winter in the fire. The creek bed lay dry. Water ran thin as a thread, horses breathing white fog, puffing into the stream until rings broke, then closed again. Far off, the red-orange smear of fire still glowed at the low sky, mirrored in the stream like a wet blade unfinished. Ada sat upright, her back not resting. Soot martins clutched the saddle, leaving 5 black streaks like claws. Fingernails scraped old leather with a dry retch. She breathed short, her shoulders lifting so little, only her button trembled. Harlan dismounted. He pressed his palm to the horse's foreflank, tracing pulse through its breath. Ash clung in a patch beneath his hat brim. He shook it once. Soot fell like black beans. The horse's wet mane stuck against his hand. He stripped off his glove, wrung out his scarf. Black water pattered into grass with a tuck. Beside mossy stones, a bottle lay on its side. Its lip tapped gravel with her hand, black water running lines between skin folds. On her wrist, the rough bandage swelled, welt bulging under cloth like a crooked letter. She let her hand fall, did not touch it. Harlan opened his mouth. His jaw twitched. He closed it. His eyes fell to the trail cutting through sage, vanishing in dwarf bamboo. He looked at grass bent under old tracks. He counted in his head how many new hoof prints pressed over them. He did not say the number. He lifted the spare saddle roll off the black's tail, heavy as a failed rainy season. A black crow rasped from a willow branch. It tilted its head, eyes reflecting the red sky. By the creek, oat grain spilled from torn sacks floated, half raw, half burnt. Ada watched them, unblinking. She picked one up, pinched it between two fingers, crushed. It broke, brown powder sticking her fingertip. She brushed it on the saddle. No word. Harlan knelt on one knee by the forehoof, checked a crack in the heel. A thin cut like a knife mark on dry board. He exhaled, short. He rose, turned, looked at the trailhead leading to the stone flat. The old fire smell faded one notch. The scent of horse and mint drifted in. That smell loosened his throat a little, then shut it again. The bit clicked twice in the horse's mouth. The wind ruffled the water's surface. The silence was too clean, clean enough that every small sound turned a blade. Hoofbeats arrived before the smell, then the smell. Half-burnt smoke, torch grease, lime-washed hide, gun oil, and a streak of cheap rose clinging to someone's collar. Rudd came first. His cloak rolled dust like a pocket sandstorm. He jerked reins, his horse stopping on a flat stone. Its forehoof tapped the surface, tock, like someone knocking on a door. He looked at Ada's soot-black hands, mouth corner twitching. The gold ring on his pinky flashed a white streak, light running across her cheek and dying on the saddle's edge. "Quick hand burning your own," he said, empty voice. He tapped the ring on the saddle's horn, tack, a thin metallic echo scattering into the sage dust. He did not smile. He angled his chin so the hat's brim shadowed half his eye. The other half, enough to stare through. Sheriff Keller followed, coat flat as if pressed. He did not ride his horse onto the stone. He stopped on earth. The coat's tail brushed a thorn bush, left a white fiber, snagged like a feather. The badge on his "Look at Rudd." He looked at the stream's mouth. Water carried away broken oat grains, half yellow, half black, half alive, half dead. He swallowed dry. Keller tapped his heel twice lightly, laying a dust film over his boot tips. He looked past Rudd at the dust-stained pouch in Harlan's hand, his eyes unblinking. He slid his gaze to Ada for half a beat, saw the edge of her bandage damp again. He looked back at the pouch. No one said, "Stop." No one said, "Go." Rudd lifted his reins, letting the horse chew the bit longer than usual. Metal scraped horse teeth dry as powder. He tilted the pinky ring so sun sliced across Harlan's eyes for a breath. His cloak shifted, showing dark stitches in the lining. Uneven. Some tied in haste. Ada did not blink at the glare. She looked down at the water. The surface returned the image of the Bar K iron, glimpsed in the alley earlier. still, the broken K like an open eye. Her hand twitched on the saddle. A nail scraped its edge. A thin stritch. She swallowed once, her throat shifting and returning. The old relay station lay 3 ridges from the stream. Roof tiles black with moss, porch posts chipped, a small bell hung dead as stone. Inside, supplies smelled of linseed oil, straw mold, and overkept grain. A cast-iron stove bulged warm. Its chimney breathed a thin stream that broke in air. On the table, the debt ledger lay open. No hand had just turned it. Page edges frayed, corners bent by fingers. The Bar K seal pressed red, thick across sheets. Seals stamped over seals, old ink, darker, near black. The round stamp's center cut, a sign, half blurred from miscarved dye. Each name line carried a number in green ink, brush strokes wide, slanted like a shaking hand. Harlan set the money pouch down. Thin leather cord rubbed the table edge with a raised scorch. He tilted the bag. Gold coins, spilled tight in a mound, did not roll. Their clash, chunk, short and heavy. Rudd stood in the doorway, his shadow cast across half the table. His gold ring caught a sunstripe through the window, gleamed one beat, then gone. Ada stood by the post. Her finger traced a long crack in the wood, stopped at a knot's bulge. She looked at the ledger. The name Pike appeared twice. The first struck through by one thin line. The second sealed red atop another. Below, a veil, faint as water shadow. The word transfer, scribbled hurried, ink bleeding into fiber. The station keeper, unseen. Only Keller stepped around the table, his hand resting light on the ledger's edge, not covering numbers. He rolled half a turn, stopped against the stamped seal. He nudged it to center with a nail, laid it between 2 overlapped seals. Ada exhaled. Her shoulders fell the thickness of a finger. She looked to the window. Outside, dust hovered in the still noon. The fly returned, landing on the ledger's margin, crossing the red seal, its feet lifting a film of ink onto its bristles. It flew off, left nothing but a faint smear like a word's ghost. Keller shook loose a sheaf of sealed papers. A red cord at the corner came undone. Wax cracked, dropping on the table like a cold bead of blood. The embossed land seal pressed bold. Crest and crossed wheat stalks centered on the first page. The paper thick, edges cut sharp as new blade, ink smell not yet gone. He laid the stack flat, turned it so the line faced Harlan's eyes. Confiscation of Pike Range for public arson, he said evenly. His voice past teeth, did not stumble, did not touch the table edge. His forefinger tapped twice on the top right corner, where the date sat. Date written a day before the fire. The signature beneath, pen curve too clean to be written in chaos. Ada gripped the table edge. Wood groaned faint. Her fingertips whitened, blood drained. She stared at the date. She stared at the signature. She stared at the emboss biting into thick paper like an animal's tooth. She swallowed hard. Her swallow met the stove's sigh, forming a discorded pair. Harlan stood still as a post. His eyes left the coin pile, fixed on the fallen wax crumb. He did not move. His face shifted half a beat, like cloud across stone. The space between him and Keller closed tight. The pocket knife in his sleeve stayed silent. He did not lift his hand. He did not speak. He only watched the pen line of Pike on the document, seeing it neater than his own tax roll writing 10 years back. Neat, clean, even, too even. Rudd stepped close to the table, his cloak shadow falling over the stack of papers. He did not read. He smelled. He tilted his ring, letting its reflection slide across the signature. He tapped it once on the corner of the table. The ring struck wood. Tick. He smiled with his eyes. No one saw, except Ada. She, standing by the post, caught that corner smile exactly as the ring left the grain. Opened. No word passed. She changed hands on the table edge, nail pulling free a splinter the size of rice. The sliver fell, vanished. She did not stoop. On the station wall, hanging among tools, another Bar K branding iron. Wooden handle wrapped in wire, its K chipped on one corner. It hung beside pliers, a hammer, a round-headed spade. At the wall's base, the cast-iron stove bulged, lid ajar, coals breathing. Rudd walked over, unhurried. He lifted the iron from its hook, as if plucking a toy from a shelf. His wrist turned it, smooth as a man practiced spinning guns before a mirror. His cloak brushed the stove, the air from its mouth puffing the cloth. He drew the chipped K near the fire's lip for a breath, just enough for heat to bite its edge. A faint shimmer rose in the air around the flaw. He did not look at anyone. He pressed the K into the table's rim. Sssss. A brown scorch opened, half a thumb's length, exact shape of the broken corner. Young burnt wood smell clung thick, resinous on tongue and nose. He lifted the iron a finger's breadth, checked the mark, pressed it down again. Silence. The line darkened. Above it, fine ash flecked like coal. Ada watched it. Her throat moved once. The vein beneath her collarbone stood taut as a bowstring. She swallowed. The sound small but clear, for the room held no other. The stove breathed soft. Papers lay still, coins unmoved. A fly stopped on the ledger's edge, cleaning its antennae. Harlan looked at the burn as a man studies tracks of some strange beast on thin snow. He did not stir. A flake of carbon dropped from the iron's flaw, leaving a speck black as a pinhead on the grain. He watched longer. He knew the smell of matter turned into speech, speech blunt, without a mouth. Rudd turned his wrist, held the iron up to his face, blew across it as if dust from a book's cover. The chipped K glowed darker than a coal's heart. His lips drew tight, his gold ring tapping the handle once. Tuck. He hung the iron back on its hook as if never touched, but the brand stayed on the table, like a signature uninvited. Keller glanced at it once, then at Harlan. He said nothing, his face flat. His badge caught a speck of light, then lost it. He lifted the papers, tapped their edge square. The sheet's corner brushed across the scorch, dragging a thin black line onto the pale grain beside it. He did not wipe. Ada let go of the table. Her 5 nail marks sat beside the branded K, not touching. She drew her blouse down, covering her back scar. The stove's glow cast red, burned on the table, cooled. Its meaning did not. It lay there, speaking for all the words none had spoken, and the brief advantage just gained fell to the floor, shattered, silent. Morning dim as washed ash. Mist clung on low pines, needles wet trembling in north wind. Bar K Camp stood like a morgue, Gate half shut, hinges wet with rust, chain loose, clinking, clang weak. Yard flat, last night's wheel ruts pressed deep, their edges rough, with white gravel. Sheriff Keller leaned under the porch beam, hat brim low. From his chest pocket, he drew a clean white cloth, folded square, wiped badge in small circles, the brass brightened, mirror flashing gray sky. He turned it slight, fabric sliding with a dry swish. No smear left, his fingers narrow, nails even, joints steady, the old mint breath faint as night air. Beyond the fence, Harlan stood bare-handed, gloves stuffed in coat, their edge jutting like a strip of night, his eyes unblinking. Mist clung to bristles at his chin, white, speckled like salt. His palm lay on fence timber, veins roped across knuckles. Mud traced the seam of his sleeve, color of ash. A single oat grain half burnt clung in the groove of his boot heel, half gold, half black, snagged like a milk tooth. A rope knife on the porch hook swayed. Beside it, another Bar-K branding iron sat mute, wire handle dulled, chipped K like a beast's broken fang. Turned toward the wall, only half its flaw showed. Dust coated it gray, the old red paint on its stem faded to bruise purple. Ada crossed the gate as if stepping ice edge, hat low, black hair tied tight with gray cloth. Bandage neat under her blouse, its swell rising faint with her breath. Her wrists slim, soot stains gone, nail rims still black. She did not look at Keller. She did not look at Harlan. She looked straight to the abandoned forge at the yard's edge. Door cracked, roof dented, chimney stump left. Rain gutter dripped onto tin basin. Tuck, tuck, a crow shifted on fence post, dropping white smear on dark timber. The burned granary far off showed a black scar at earth's rim. Smell of straw and ash mingled with leftover linseed in the yard. None of Bar-K but a stable hand asleep in saddle, hat down, reins trailing dirt. Keller folded the cloth again, seams squared. He lifted badge to eye, blew mist off, pinned it back to coat. His hand smoothed the lapel. Flat, clean. The cloth slipped into his pocket, one white edge showing neat. He raised his eyes. They passed Harlan, stopped at the forge's dark slit. Silent. Harlan bent his head, shifting. The abandoned forge cold as tombstone. Inside, a round iron brazier sat rooted in dirt. The old bellows slumped in a corner, leather cracked like sun-scaled snakeback. A long iron tong lay across, hinge rusted, mouth gaping a finger's width. Ash bucket by the stove chipped at rim, gray filled to halfway. Ada laid the Bar-K iron on the brazier. Old coals hid under ash, still red from last night, needing only air. She pulled the bellows, leather rasping, hark, hark, dry. Flame flared quick, clung to the brazier's belly, glowing outwards. The steel took it, moving from dark brown to cherry red to bright. The chipped K showed sharp as beast tooth. Flaw sizzling when heat licked the crack. Harlan stood at the door, bare hand lifting a rotten beam so light could cut in. Dust swarmed, the shaft cleaving across the glowing iron, leaving a thin white line like fishbone. Sweat gathered at his brow, did not fall. The mist outside stacked across the threshold, pressing sound low. Keller stopped at the doorway, 1 foot in the mist, 1 foot in the shop's shadow. He peered inside under the brim of his hat, hand resting on a coat button, not the gun. His mint breath struck the coal smoke and split apart. He asked nothing. The badge on his chest caught a red glint, burned and went out. Ada took the tongs, lifted the branding iron's handle to the rim of the brazier. The steel sighed faintly as it left the bed of coals. She poured in chips, scraped ash, pumped the bellows twice. The chipped K flared deeper red, its flaw rimmed in orange. Faint teaks of sap bursting under the stove's belly. On the table, yesterday's mark remained, a brown scar, half a thumb's length. Ada glanced at it once, then back to the iron. No words. The tongs squealed when she clamped tighter. Her arm trembled from shoulder to wrist, but held steady. Fingernails rimmed in black. The glow washed half her nails plum dark. Harlan stepped inside, stood by the table, one hand on the wood's edge, the other shading the draught at the door, so the fire breathed fuller. He caught a glance at Keller. Half a heartbeat. Keller's face did not change. He drew out the white cloth again, passed it once over the badge, and put it away. Still white. "Enough," Harlan said, voice lower than the bellows. Ada nodded faint. She lifted the iron from the brazier, steel red flashing against the rafters like an animal eye in brush. Heat vapor met cold air, raised a film of white. The tongs bit wood, hinge ticking. No one spoke. Keller's chipped carrot steaming. "Press." Harlan clamped Keller's wrist and brought the K down on the gloved palm. The hiss, tight sss, bitterness thick on the tongue. The glove shrank, old horse grease smoked blue. Keller's breath cut thin through his teeth. He did not snatch back. His eyelid flicked like a pin. The badge fell. Dry clatter. Brass struck stone twice, first round, second short. It rolled half a turn, lay face up to the rafters. The K sank into leather, rim charred, flaw burned crimson, smoke lifted sharp. Ada set the iron down hard on the table, shifted tongs to her other hand, turned its head off the grain. She said nothing. Harlan let Keller's wrist go a pace after the sound. Keller looked at the glove, smoke rising, straight, gone before his eyes. He did not bend for the badge. Wind drew through the broken flue, hollow as bottleneck. Mist folded in, reddened the brazier's belly. Ada leaned to the ash tub, lowered the iron. The hiss cut short, foot. Ash smothered the steel. Outside a chain swung once, rang thin. The stable hand blinked, peered in through the crack, hit smoke, withdrew. None called him, none sent him off. Ada stooped, picked the badge, smoke on the brass. Her palm left a black smudge when she set it in Harlan's hand. He turned it face down, pressed it onto the K, seared in the glove. The stalk and wheat, etched faint, dulled in soot. No words. Keller drew off the glove, leather tearing from the lining with a thin rasp. His bare hands showed. The K burned deep, edges black, blister at the flaw's tip. He raised it, forge light passing through, turning the welt a hollow pit. His pupils pinched, dry, no tear. He closed his fingers as if shutting a box. No blood. Harlan lifted his eyes, rested them on the brand for a beat, then moved them past Keller's shoulder. He stepped back, left the fallen glove. Dust settled, dimming the last ember. Ada straightened, her hand still carrying the iron's char. She tightened her bandage, swelling shifting under cloth. She looked out, pines wet with mist. A drop fell on a shovel blade. Tink. The shop smelled of ash and mint breaking, leaving a blank white odor. Keller stooped, took up the glove, pocketed it with the white cloth. The cloth no longer white. From another pocket he drew a short cigar, unlit. He stood still, forge smoke traced the K on his palm, marked it dark, and vanished. In the yard, the gate chain stilled. A crow stepped along the beam, head bent toward the doorway. None looked up. Harlan turned first, his shadow cutting across wheel ruts, leaving the mist small drops. Day rose slow. Danger's echo stayed in the shop. Between 1K pressed in flesh, one badge fallen mute, and one iron buried cold. The stove cooled. The Barquet iron buried half in ash, its flaw toothless. On the table, the K-scar remained. Outside, the badge's fall still sounded dry, its shine gone. Law had spoken in paper. Truth had spoken in iron. Between them lay a barn burned, one winter thrown to fire for passage. The hand that kept order now carried the K forever. The gold ring needed no more words. So what counts as justice? The embossed seal on paper, or the iron letter seared in flesh? When law stands with wealth, do you keep silence? Or let metal speak and pay as Harlan paid? If it were you, would you keep the badge clean? Or carry the mark no wash can lift? Tell me, where lies the last line before a man must betray what he once believed?